new man. My Shayla. We might not be getting a WNBA season, y'all. My optimism is running out. Don't I look a little more pale? I'm losing my skin complexion, man. This is crazy work. This is crazy work what's going on, man. The WNBPA sent the counter proposal, and nothing's really changing, man. Nothing's really changing while we're in the 11th hour.
That's not just concern you're hearing. That's the sound of someone watching their optimism die in real time. And he's not alone. With training camp scheduled to start in less than 3 weeks, we're staring down the barrel of something the WNBA hasn't faced in years, a potential lockout that could wipe out the entire 2025 season. The WNBA Players Association just submitted their latest counter-proposal on Friday evening, and the gap between what players want and what owners are willing to give hasn't narrowed. It's gotten worse.
Of the agreement, with the salary cap in year one of the deal about $9.5 million unchanged from his previous offer. Now, the thing is, man, this is why I feel like this season might not happen. I was hoping things would start looking more realistic around this time, man. And honestly, you know, I've been having people saying, oh, you're all for the owners. Oh, look at you. You just hate the players. No, man. I'm all for realistic numbers, man. I'm all for things that make sense, right? That's what I'm for.
Here's the core issue that's tearing these negotiations apart. The players are demanding 26% of gross revenue. Gross revenue means the money before you subtract any expenses. Travel costs, arena rentals, staff salaries, marketing budgets, none of that gets deducted first. The owners are offering roughly 14.5% of gross revenue, but they're framing it differently. They're saying players would get over 70% of net revenue, which is what's left after expenses are paid. Now, every other major sports league operates on gross revenue sharing. The NBA gives players 50% of basketball-related income before expenses. The NFL splits revenue similarly. So on the surface, asking for gross revenue share isn't unreasonable. Except for one critical difference that changes everything.
It's already bonkers. It's bonkers, man. I don't care what anybody say. It is bonkers, okay? I know people want to skip over the fact that they're not making a profit, but that is very important. They always compare themselves to the NBA, the NFL, the MLB, all these other leagues. Fam, those leagues are making billions. They're making billions. And yes, they do get gross revenue share. So it's not crazy that players are asking for gross revenue. But y'all are not making profit. So that's why the owners are trying to give you net revenue share.
The WNBA isn't profitable. That's not an opinion or a talking point from ownership. It's the financial reality that separates this negotiation from every comparison players keep making. The NBA generated over $10 billion in revenue last season and turned massive profits. The NFL prints money. Major League Baseball, same story. Those leagues can afford to give players gross revenue percentages because after everyone gets paid, there's still hundreds of millions left over. The WNBA lost money for 26 straight years before finally approaching break-even in 2024, thanks almost entirely to the Caitlin Clark effect. Record viewership, sold-out arenas, unprecedented merchandise sales, and even with that historic spike, the league barely scratched profitability. Now players want to lock in compensation based on that anomaly year, as if it's the new normal.
Caitlin Clark's first year in the WNBA, her draft night, right? They were calling it an anomaly. Well, if you believe that it's sustainable and you believe that the trajectory of this type of viewership is going to keep going, why would you call it an anomaly? And then we see what happened when Caitlin Clark sat down. The viewership dropped 55% across the league. That was crazy work. Part of the main reason why I feel like we're not going to get a season this year is because how the owners are not even budging with that revenue share, fam. I would see if they were going up maybe 15, because I believe from what NECA stated, they're at 14.5. So
this is where the rubber meets the road. When Caitlin Clark sat down during the playoffs, league-wide viewership dropped 55%. Not 5%, not 15%, 55%. That single statistic terrifies owners because it proves what they've been saying all along. The 2024 spike wasn't sustainable growth. It was one generational talent creating a temporary bubble. And yet the players' proposal assumes that bubble is permanent. They want the salary cap in year one set at $9.5 million, unchanged from their previous offer. That's more than 6 times the current cap of $1.5 million. The owners countered with $5.6 million, which is still nearly a 4 times increase, but the players haven't budged on their number. Think about what that means practically. If you're an owner who's been subsidizing losses for 2 decades, finally seeing a path to sustainability, and then players demand you immediately quadruple payroll based on one outlier season driven by one player, would you sign that deal?
Their split is down from 27.5% of gross revenue as proposed in the WNBPA's February 17th proposal, a change that a source said amounts to nearly $100 million in reductions on revenue share. Now, it states here the new proposal also contained tweaks to the union's housing offerings. Previously, the players asked teams continue to provide housing to players in the first several years of the new deal, but that in later years, teams will no longer be obligated to provide it for players making at least 80% of the maximum salary on multi-year deals and receiving full salary protection. Thing is, they're comparing themselves to these other leagues. These other leagues don't necessarily do the housing stuff, man, unless you're in the G League or maybe
The housing situation reveals how far apart these sides really are. Currently, teams provide housing for players during the season. It's one of the unique benefits in the WNBA because salaries are lower than other leagues. Players want to keep that arrangement in the early years of a new deal, but then phase it out for top earners making at least 80% of the max salary on multi-year contracts with full protection. Here's the problem with that proposal. They're trying to have it both ways. They want to be treated like NBA players who find their own housing and negotiate their own living situations, but they also want teams to keep providing housing for everyone except the highest paid. The NBA doesn't do that. The NFL doesn't do that. MLB doesn't do that. Those leagues provide housing during training camp, and that's it. Once the season starts, you're on your own. So which is it? Are you a major professional league where players handle their own accommodations, or are you a developmental league that needs housing support? You can't cherry-pick which comparisons apply when it's convenient.
To me, man. It said the two sides are still negotiating the years of service limit for developmental players, a new feature of this CBA, with each team now expected to have 2 developmental player spots. The union is now proposing a year of service limit of 6 after originally asking for no experience limit. My goodness, no experience limit for those players, a source said, while the league's latest proposal suggested 4 or 5 years of service based on minutes played. Now, in my honest opinion, all right, developmental players, that sounds like when I'm always saying, hey, man, you got to give players the time to develop, right? So that's 3 years, max 4. Max 4, fam. 6 years? 6. My goodness, man. Hey, by that time, man, you need to be way beyond a developmental player. All right, 6 years? Come on, man. That's kind of wild.
Now we get to something that should concern every WNBA fan, regardless of which side you support, the developmental player designation. This is new for this CBA. Each team would have 2 developmental roster spots for younger or less experienced players. Think of it like the NBA's two-way contracts. The league proposed that developmental players could have 4 to 5 years of service based on minutes played. The union countered with 6 years. 6 years before you're no longer considered a developmental player. Let that sink in. If you've been in the league for 6 seasons and you're still not good enough to earn a regular roster spot, at what point do we acknowledge you're not developing into anything? This isn't about being harsh, it's about being realistic. 3 years is a reasonable development window, maybe 4 if you've dealt with injuries or limited opportunities, but 6 years? That's longer than most players' entire WNBA careers. The average career length in the league is under 4 years. So you're telling me someone can be in the league longer than the average career and still be classified as developmental? That's not a development system. That's job protection for players who haven't earned full roster spots.
6 years? Come on, man. That's crazy work. If you're not going in, making big buckets, making a big change for a team, man, you're just not that player. All right, by the 6th year, that's crazy work. Now, skipping a little bit because we kind of know all this stuff up here already, but this is basically what I've been saying. But the two sides are still far apart on the issue of revenue sharing, including proposing different revenue sharing systems. The WNBA has held firm in its proposals, with players being offered on average over 70% of net revenue, revenue after deducting expenses, which would amount to less than 15% of gross revenue. The 2026 salary cap would come in at 5.6 million, up from 1.5 million in 2025. That in subsequent years will grow in line with revenue growth. So that's the biggest problem right here, man. You have the owners trying to give you net, the players won't grow.
The players made concessions in this latest proposal. They dropped their revenue share demand from 27.5% to 26%. According to sources, that amounts to nearly $100 million in reductions over the life of the deal. On paper, that sounds significant. They're giving up $100 million. But here's the context that matters. They're negotiating percentages of revenue that doesn't exist yet. The WNBA generated roughly $200 million in revenue in 2024. If we're generous and project 10% annual growth, which would be extraordinary, you're looking at maybe $300 million by year 5 of a new deal. 26% of $300 million is $78 million in player compensation that year. The owners are offering 14.5% of gross, which would be $43.5 million using the same projection. The gap is still $34.5 million in year 5 alone. And that's assuming the league actually grows to $300 million in revenue, which requires sustained viewership and attendance that we have no evidence will happen without Caitlin Clark playing at a historic level. So yes, the players reduced their ask by $100 million over the entire deal. But they're still asking for hundreds of millions more than owners believe the league can afford while remaining financially viable.
League would be sustainable, right? I mean, how are y'all going to pay these expenses if y'all are sucking all the money? Y'all sucking all the money up. I know some of y'all are wishing that I was 100% on the player side, but man, y'all can take that to a wishing well, man. It's just not making sense what they're asking for, fam. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You know, if it's not making dollars, it's not making sense. I'm sorry. I just can't get behind what these players are asking for. You know, it's kind of like if you're going to buy a car and you're negotiating the price down, right? You want to get the price down. You're not going to go, let's say the car is $20,000. You're not going to go to $10,000. Hey, look, I got $10,000. This all I got. Hey, what you going to do with it? You know, at least I would meet them at 15. I start at 15. Hey, you know, I got 15 right here, cash, right here ready for you. You going to take it or leave it? That's going to knock them down a little bit. That's going to entice them to try to meet me somewhere. It's not enticing the owners, man. Y'all let me know in the comment section, though. How y'all feel about it? Do y'all think the owners will fold? Do y'all think the players will fold? Do you think we'll have a season? At this point, man, like I stated, my optimism is going down. I don't think we're going to have a season, man. I hate to say it. Y'all know I've been optimistic this entire time, but I hate to say it. It's not looking good. Get in the comment section. Let me know how y'all feel about it. I love y'all.
Here's what makes this situation so precarious. The owners haven't moved at all. Not 1 percentage point. They've held firm at 14.5% of gross revenue, which translates to over 70% of net revenue. Meanwhile, players have dropped from 30% to 27.5% to 26%. Small movements, but movements nonetheless. When one side is negotiating and the other side isn't budging, that tells you everything about leverage. The owners believe they have time on their side. They think players will panic as we get closer to the season start date. They're betting that when paychecks are actually on the line, when players are staring at zero income for an entire year, the union will crack, and they might be right. Because here's the uncomfortable truth nobody wants to say out loud. Most WNBA players can't afford to miss a season. The average salary right now is around $130,000. That's good money, but it's not skip a year of work money, especially when many players have been planning for raises that now might not come. The max salary players like Breanna Stewart and Aja Wilson can survive a lockout financially. They have endorsement deals and overseas options. But the middle-class players, the ones making $70,000 to $100,000, they need this season to happen. The owners know this. The union knows the owners know this, and that power dynamic is why these negotiations feel so lopsided. It's not just about revenue percentages and salary caps. It's about who can afford to wait longer, who can stomach more pain. And right now, that's not the players. The agents are getting involved now, which is significant. Agents represent individual players, not the collective union. When agents start making noise, it usually means their clients are getting nervous. They're worried about losing a year of earning potential, a year of career development, a year of building their brand. For someone like Caitlin Clark, missing her second WNBA season would be devastating for her trajectory. For rookies who haven't played a single game yet, Missing year one means entering the league a year older with zero experience. And here's the thing about beat reporters that nobody wants to acknowledge. The media covering this story has been overwhelmingly pro-player in their framing. They talk about player empowerment and fair compensation and the growth of the game, all legitimate points. But they rarely dig into the financial realities that make the owner's position defensible. They don't explain why gross revenue sharing might bankrupt half the league's franchises. They don't explore what happens if the 2025 season sees viewership crater back to 2023 levels because the Caitlin Clark novelty has worn off. The uncomfortable question nobody's asking is this: what if the owners are right? What if 26% of gross revenue genuinely isn't sustainable given the league's financial position? What if the players get everything they're demanding, and then 3 years from now teams start folding because they can't afford operations? What good is a higher salary cap if 6 teams go under and 100 roster spots disappear? Watch that initial interaction again with fresh eyes. That's not just pessimism about this negotiation. That's someone who's done the math and realized the numbers don't work. The players want NBA money without NBA revenue. They want NFL treatment without NFL profitability. They want MLB guarantees without MLB attendance. And the owners are finally saying no. Now compare that to how optimistic everyone was 6 months ago. After the Caitlin Clark season, after the record ratings and sold-out arenas and mainstream media attention, everyone assumed the new CBA would be a celebration. Players would get massive raises, owners would happily pay them, because the league was finally taking off and we'd all move forward into this golden era of women's basketball. That optimism has completely evaporated. The contrast reveals something important about the WNBA's actual financial health versus the narrative we've been sold. Yes, 2024 was historic. Yes, viewership exploded. Yes, attendance was up across the board. But one good year doesn't erase 26 years of losses. One generational talent doesn't guarantee sustained growth. And the owners clearly don't believe the 2024 numbers represent the league's true value. Scott Agness had to know this was coming. Anyone paying attention to the CBA negotiations could see this train wreck approaching. The players' initial demands were so far from reality that there was no path to quick resolution, and every day that passes without a deal increases the likelihood we lose the season. Training camp is supposed to start in less than 3 weeks. Teams need time to prepare. Players need time to get in shape. Rookies need to be drafted and signed. None of that can happen without a CBA in place. What makes this particularly awkward is that the WNBA just had its best season ever, and now we might not have a season at all. Imagine being a casual fan who just discovered the league because of Caitlin Clark. You watched the playoffs, you bought a jersey, you're excited for 2025, and then you find out there might not be games because players and owners can't agree on how to split money the league barely makes. That's not a good look for anyone involved. This dynamic is going to continue getting worse before it gets better. The players can't back down too much without looking weak to their membership. The owners can't give in too much without setting a financial precedent that could sink franchises, and the clock is ticking louder every single day. Something has to give. Either the players accept a deal much closer to the owner's position, or the owners significantly increase their offer, or we lose the season. There's no fourth option here. So the question becomes, was asking for gross revenue share worth it? Was demanding 26% instead of negotiating from a more realistic starting point worth potentially losing an entire season? Because that's where we are now. The players bet big on their leverage from the Caitlin Clark season. They assumed owners would be so thrilled with 2024's success that they'd open the checkbook, and the owners called their bluff. Now we wait to see who blinks first. My money's on the players, but not because I'm anti-player or pro-owner. Simply because they have more to lose in the short term. Owners can absorb a lost season financially. Most players can't. And when survival is on the line, principles become negotiable real quick. We're about to find out just how committed the WNBA Players Association is to their 26% demand. Because if they're not willing to lose a season over it, they should probably start negotiating like it.